The moment that you become stagnant and static is the moment that you're no longer a contributor to your ecosystem.
What's shaking? Rick Jordan back with the All In Podcast, and I'm here with Coach Cam. What's shaking, my man?
Hey, glad to be here and enjoying this beautiful fall weather. We typically get 2 seasons in Texas, hot and not as hot. So maybe we can get some actual brown leaves this year.
That's great. No snow, hopefully. No snow. I mean, I know that like sprinkles in every now and then, but
about every 7 years. So I'm in Houston. So a point of reference, Dallas is 4 hours north.
Yep.
Austin is 2.5, 3 hours, northwest. So we get what we call snow about once every 6 years. I mean, it doesn't stick. I mean, by the time the sun comes up, like you guys would laugh at it up there, but we cancel school.
Yeah, for sure. Let's say everybody freaks out, right?
Yeah.
No doubt, man. I have family that lives in Nashville, and they might get like a max of 2 inches. I've never talked about weather on the show before. This is crazy as we're talking about this. But they get max maybe 2 inches, but the same thing. They close all the schools because they just don't have plows. They don't invest in these things because they typically don't need them. So I'd imagine Houston would be the same way. But Houston, I mean, dude, it's like I got an Aston Martin, right? That thing goes into storage in Chicago from November through the end of March because there's no driving that in Chicago during those months. But what happens in Houston? I mean, I'm sure the nice cars get like put away or people start to freak out just by like a dusting, right?
Yeah, there's no storage. You just put it away during hurricane season.
Oh, nice. That makes sense. Yes. That's fantastic, man. That's cool.
End of July to about right now, you'd put it on the second floor of a storage facility. But as soon as the weather cracks sub 75, it's coming right back out.
Oh, nice. That's all. I wouldn't have even thought about that hurricane season. But yeah, you don't want that thing out there. No.
Yeah, no.
That's insane.
That's a very expensive floating device.
For sure, right on. Dude, talk about hurricanes, man. This year, as if 2020 with everything else going on couldn't be crazy enough. I know we're going to have White Walkers at the end of the year come. If you ever watch Game of Thrones, they're going to pop up. But still, the hurricanes. What the heck is the deal with the hurricanes this year? Because you're right there in the middle of all this stuff.
It's a relatively consistent season. I think that, we probably in the Gulf Coast, so, southeast Texas, kind of through the panhandle to Mexico. I mean, Florida, you get a couple that make contact a season. I mean, that's consistent. I feel like everyone's just on the butt edge of their seat. So everything is getting full media attention. This hurricane season, as a point of reference, in 2017, when we got Hurricane, what's the last one to come? Oh, shoot, I just lost it. Hurricane Harvey, 2 or 3 weeks later, Hurricane Maria came and wiped out Puerto Rico. So, I mean, that, as a point of context, is what a busy season looks like. This is just a regular season. Everyone's just at home now. So you're watching the Weather Network.
That makes so much difference. No kidding. Because this year with COVID and everything, the perspective on everything has changed because everyone's so much more in tune to what's going on. I mean, even with the election and everything. I mean, the first off, the RNC and the DNC, both of those conventions, man, had like the lowest ratings in history because nobody wanted to watch them, and it was sad to me because the perspective on this is like now you had a chance, and this has nothing to do with either side. I think both of them sucked just because they thought that they could put on this thing and they went into it thinking they were going to do the same thing that they do every single year live in person, but then they just throw it up on YouTube or something like that. And it was mind-blowing because people's perspectives have changed. Like with the hurricanes, just like you said, I never would have thought of that, man, because everyone's at home now, so they're recognizing, hey, this thing's coming for me. What do I do?
Right. Yeah. So it's funny you say that. So the DNC, to me, and again, I think I'm glad that you brought it up. I think the civility of talking about the political arena without getting political is like disappearing, right? So to have this conversation without going there, you know what I mean? So
I feel you.
So the DNC to me felt like a blender. So do you remember like in the mid 90s when your cable box was like this big?
Yes.
and you just like, it was like QVC, ESPN, right? So what it felt like was like the DNC tried to go mid 90s cable, and we're going to find something for the early voters, something for the, you know, the millennials. So I'm technically I'm an old millennial, but I'm technically a millennial. So like, so it felt so segmented. You could like feel like, okay, here's the grandpa section, and Joe Biden was sitting in front of a big screen, and it's like, hey, Papa, how you doing? Right? So it felt like
it was like a bad transmission on a 30-year-old car, like trying to shove it into the next gear.
Yeah, right. So it felt like the DNC was trying to catch all, which, you know, like you try to catch everyone, you catch no one. And then the RNC was weird, obviously, just because of the nepotism, and just like it just felt like an inside glimpse into the Trump family reunion. Like, oh, here's Uncle Fester coming in to give his official stump speech. You know
oh
what I mean?
God, that's hilarious, man. Starting off already, this episode has gone nowhere that I expected it to go, and I'm loving it, man. This is great. You're right though, man, because I was on a show right before July 4th, and it was with an awesome black dude and a Hispanic dude, and we were talking politics without talking politics. They were right around Independence Day, and I really feel, I love the color purple for me because, you know, it's weird because I have values that kind of resonate. If you want to like choose a side of the aisle, they resonate with both sides of the aisle. You know, and it's interesting because I look back, it's like I'm more of like I have a lot of things in line with the Democratic Party from like JFK era. Right. And then some other things that from like the Republican Ronald Reagan era, you know, that are now blended together. And one reason I love purple is because it's the color of luxury, it's the color of royalty, but it's also the color of unity. And it is literally the blend of the colors red and blue. And I didn't even think about that until like election year this year. I'm like, holy crap. It's like, that's exactly how I feel. And those conversations are the conversations that we need to keep having, man. Because I find out that a lot of people like to, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but a lot of people really want the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, so first off, you know, I think like you know, so I'm an African-American athlete from the South and a Christian, right? Which means those four psychographics mean I have like relatively somewhat conservative values, like just that box set.
Sure.
Right. But then I'm an endangered species. I'm physically threatening and intimidating to a lot of like white people, right? Just call it what it is. And, you know, I'm a capitalist. I'm a social capitalist, but I am a capitalist, right? So it's like, so those kind of put you here. And so I think to your point, 80% of America's purple, bro. Yeah. And you got your 10% that are blue, your 10% that are red. We all want the same thing, right? We all want opportunities. We all want, if you opt out of capitalism and you choose to, you know, do whatever for work and career, that's your choice, and you should be safe there. But if you opt in for guys like you and I don't want to be capped on what I can earn. I don't necessarily believe, while I do understand the necessity for government, right? And this is kind of where, you know, my ethical values are. I do believe in putting yourself up by the bootstraps, but I also understand, especially as a person of color, that there are some people who don't even have shoes on their feet.
Sure, man.
Right. And so the government should be there to be a resource, not to throw shoes at you, but to say, here's some leather. Now let me show you how to build some shoes. Now pull yourself up. Right. And so there, as contentious as politics and ethical values are in politics, you know, again, for us to even have this conversation, you know, beat so many norms because there's somebody listening saying this guy's got this stump and this value. And, you know, I had a conversation recently with two people from the Republican and the Democratic Party here in the area. And they were, you know, kind of gauging my interest in running for a position. And, you know, both conversations led to me pointing, I'm not sure if you've seen the most recent cover of Forbes magazine. Reed Hastings, the CEO of Netflix, is on the cover. And I asked him this question, right? So I'm like, so what's your value system on this guy, right? So billionaire, self-made, whatever, doesn't pay a lot of taxes. And, you know, without telling you which party said which, both of them had fault. And I'm like, here's the thing, dude. if I were to slap Reed Hastings with $1 million tax bill, I'd much rather slap him with the obligation of saying, keep your $1 million, go build a $2 million school that can put out fires and fix problems for the kids who are racking up student loan debt that should not be in school.
Yeah.
Right. So the trades aren't in school, HVAC, plumbing, auto mechanics, the idea that every kid is a college kid is a broken dream. I mean, it's just not realistic. Right. So, the idea to me of social capitalism is, yes, pursue your opt into the game and whatever, accoutrements you want to gather. But at the same time, you have to understand that if you don't pour back into the ecosystem, that you're going to be shortchanged, right? So the kid who's racked up $100,000 only to figure out that he shouldn't be a civil engineer is the same guy you're going to need to repair, the engine on your Aston, right? And so helping our ecosystem from a holistic standpoint goes a whole lot further than just slapping tax bills at people and, pay, yes, pay more. I understand that, but it's not a dollar amount that needs to get paid. It's an impact that needs to get, and most times the impact does come in dollars. I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
but
I'm with you.
I'd much rather have Reed Hastings' ingenuity, creativity, and special sauce fixing problems than him just cutting a cold check.
Sure, man. And I feel you on this because I think you're hitting on a couple of points. If you look at the majority of the politicians that are slapping those tax bills on, they are all typically like older generations, not like you and me. Right. So I don't know what the mindset is, but at the same time, the tax implications that they're putting in place right now are never going to affect them because some of these are even like deferring the effectiveness 5 and 10 years in some of this legislation that they're proposing. And that's an amazing concept. And I've always thought this, being an entrepreneur myself, like, if you're going to slap me with $1 million tax bill, you know how many jobs I could provide for that $1 million? You know what kind of education I could dump back in or donate that somewhere, rather than paying the taxes. So where's this money actually going? And of course, that's just a rhetorical question. But I have not heard that much of a straight line out of really anybody, except in this conversation and everything you just said, because it just makes sense. And when you say the whole country, like 80% of us are purple, isn't that really what we want anyways? Something that just makes sense and that isn't like a reactionary quick fix. We need more money to fund these government programs. We need to look at something long-term that has to do with our social economic ecosystem. That's the stuff that we should be putting into place and putting line items in the budget. I mean, where's human trafficking is a line item in the federal budget, right? Those types of things. And man, you're going to be excited because you're going to get me on a stump speech here in a second here.
Well, so two things you need to know about me. So my dream job as a kid was to be a politician. Right. So I got a C in poli-sci my freshman year and said, oh, what's plan B? Right. So giving and serving has always been just like a part of what defines who I am. And, the most recent company I launched, Texas Athletic Construction, in 2017, that's what I did. So I launched it and designed it intentionally to be a disruptive, have a disruption model. What I did not intend was the unique value proposition that we created. So 2017, I'm a Christian. It's Lent season and just going through the struggle that, most people do during the season. And I'm torn. I'm like, dude, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be giving. I'm supposed to be serving. I'd already started my scholarship foundation and my turkey drive. But at the same time, it's like, I know I'm opting into this capitalism game. I need to figure out, like, how do I drive my business? And Rick, I literally married the two together. And so what I do in my sports construction company is, as we're awarded or as we receive projects, either commercial or residential, I earmark a large amount of our revenue back into the community. So for residential jobs, if you were to tell me you wanted a tennis court in your backyard, then let's say that's, $150,000. I'd say, well, I'll charge you $120,000, $125,000. You go write a $25,000 check to that nonprofit, and I'll go do some community programming to make an impact in our community. And so, most problems the answers are simple. right? It's just, can we move ego out of the way? Can we move our own best interests? Like with that $25,000, like would I mind that in my pocket? Of course not. But again, having a giver's spirit, not only does that allow me a pathway to get the work that I want to get done, but what I didn't intend for it to do, but what it created was a unique value proposition, right? So the next guy who coming in to bid this project, like, yeah, our price may be comparable, our craftsmanship may be the same, but why would you award that guy the project when we can partner together for the same price and we can do double good? And then what I didn't realize until the end of the project that I did was, now at the end of the year, not only do you have the tennis court you want, you've been a part of an amazing community project, but that nonprofit is now sending you a letter for $25,000, right? So not only, yeah, I mean, by seeking to do the best version of good, you get all these extra add-ins that, that was never the intended desire.
I love that. Those side benefits that you never expect, being a Christian myself too, man. I mean, giving is just something that is really close to me. And I never give to get, but it's amazing to me the reciprocation that happens with something like that, and I closed a bunch of amazing deals in my cyber business this past month. And immediately it was like, my first thought was, sweet, what can I give away? Who can I help? Because it's like, if I'm entrusted with a little, then I know I'm going to be entrusted with much. As long as I do good with the little, then I'm going to be given much. And it's, you just keep leveling up the entire time. At least this is what I found, man, because you start with, again, being a Christian, you start with like the tiniest amount. And even if you don't think you have it, when something comes across your plate, just give to that. Even if it's like $10 to somebody on the street or something like that. You get wiser as you go along, and you start to do this, of course, because now it turned into, instead of giving somebody money, now it's, what do you need it for? I'm asking questions. Okay, right. You need food. Right. Awesome. You know what? There's a Chipotle right there. How about I walk in there right now and get you some tacos? Because that's what you're telling me you need the money for. That's cool. And most of them are just ecstatic because now you're fulfilling an immediate need and helping this individual. Or I'll ask questions for somebody selling candy. It's like, what are you going to do with this? Or somebody knocking on my door selling a newspaper subscription for college tuition. Well, what do you really need? How much do you get? These are my questions, being from an entrepreneurial standpoint. How much do you get towards your tuition every time you sell me or sell anybody these newspaper subscriptions? And first, nobody reads a newspaper anymore. So I realized this kid is in a tough spot to begin with because he's selling physical papers being delivered to your house. I'm like, dude, nobody's going to read this. Right. The only reason they're going to get this is to help you. But then it's, what do you get? He's like, I think I get like $15. I'm like, dude, I appreciate your hustle. Here, I'm going to give you $100 right now. Put this towards your college tuition. That way you don't have to sell this. And he's like, but but then it comes back to, I need to make my numbers too. It's like, okay, cool. I'll sign up for the subscription and I'm going to give you $100 because of the good, decent conversation that you just had with me and that you were vulnerable. You were open and told me what your needs were. And because you knocked on the right door today with somebody who likes to serve other people. That's what I'm doing. And then the next day, I swear, man, every time this happens, it's like the very next day, something comes through to where it's like the $100 turns into $10,000 for me the very next day. I was like, hey, I didn't even intend this. I was just trying to help a kid go to college. That's all it was. And that's that circle, man. So why the $1 million tax? It comes back to that, right? To the CEO of Netflix.
Well, yeah. Yeah. So the takeaway for me. So first off, to close what you just said, folks who are non-givers miss out on the selfish benefit of giving. Like it's. Yeah. I don't. I'm not a drug guy, right? But I mean, if I were to be really high, I have to imagine that's what it feels like. The euphoria, right, of like giving is, even when you. I don't say do it for selfish reasons, even when you do it because you want that feeling. Like I enjoy the feeling of giving to other people, like the feeling it gives me. If people understood how amazing that feeling is, that, we'd be as a country in a much different place. So that's my thought on that. The idea of the Reed Hastings tax, like, yes, we need cities and streets and sewers. And again, like you guys need plows. We need updated bayous for drains for hurricanes. So it's like, yes, I do understand that we all have a civic duty to make the place that we share enjoyable. But even that idea, right? So Texas is long a Republican state, which has conservative values. Houston, or TxDOT, the transportation organization, for the first time, and I can't tell you how long, instead of expanding a freeway and doing it in-house, privatize the project. And it is what easily would have taken 15 years. Like, I bullcorn you not. Like, it's a long stretch. It's probably 30 miles. It's a very long stretch of freeway. It's going to be done in less than 5. I mean, and done so clean and so effectively because they privatize it, right? So every 6 months, my contract is up for renewal, which means I've got to be on my A game. There's no space for me to lack off as a contractor, because if I want to have a shot to get the next quarter mile, they bid it out quarter mile at a time for this freeway. So every quarter mile, you got contractors who are coming in at or under budget on or before a deadline because they want to have a shot to get that next quarter mile. And so it's like, that's how you integrate government with private business. And it works beautiful because the benefactor are us citizens who get to enjoy, quickly moving freeway versus, another monstrous, overspent, out of budget, so-and-so's out of office now is no longer a priority. And so, I think that there's been such a strong dichotomy of government and private sector, not big business, but like small to medium business. And small to medium business is where all the superheroes are.
That's so true. There's some days I feel like a superhero. I mean, I'm small business, right? Moving into medium-sized business, but it's because of that fulfillment that you're talking about, that high that you get. You're dead on, man. It's almost like it's serving others is selfishly unself-serving or selfishly non-self-serving, because you know what's going to happen after. And I know what's going to happen after, because it's like, awesome, here's something else that's crossing my plate. When you're talking about the privatization of a lot of these projects too, that's also putting jobs out there for everyone else that needs them in those moments. And you get the benefit of having something done in a third the time too. Imagine if government ran like a business did. And I know that's actually like some of the ideas that even our current president has, whether you like him or not. The dude knows how to run business. But still, what if there was metrics, like performance indicators of government bodies, and they had to compete, like even if we're just talking state bodies, and they had to compete for tax dollars? It's just a crazy idea, people, because there's all these different demographics and geological, just different races, different, because you have different things like hurricanes in Texas versus Las Vegas would have, flash floods coming down from the mountains, right? Different scenarios, different types of natural disasters that could affect different areas. But those being on an equal playing field, imagine if local governments had to compete for tax dollars by showing historical good performance. And that would also determine who would live in and around those communities too. Because I think about me coming from Illinois, there's been a mass exodus of Illinoisans over the past 5 years because of how ridiculous the taxes are here and how ridiculous some of the corruption of government is. And there's no competition. And now the state's looking for a federal bailout of grant money just to give to the state to try to succumb to, so they don't have to succumb to a budget deficit. There's something the other day, just the city of Chicago is facing a $1.2 billion deficit. A shortfall just coming up here. That's a lot of cash, man. And it's imagine if they had to compete for those things, because I even came from 20 years ago having to write grants for and gathering data in the technology field for homelessness. And all the data that I was able to put together for the social service agencies in and around Chicago ended up gaining another $14 million of federal grant money from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And that was like a competition almost, because there's lots of different agencies and communities submitting these things to HUD, and then they're picking out the best that have the best plans with them, those that can actually show a track record, and that's what the data did. That was my part of it, is showing the track record. And that was just mind-boggling and also just eyes wide open to me when I saw how real data and real performance can actually influence dollars coming from the federal government. And where did that go? Imagine if that existed right now, even for like police departments, man. I mean,
well, Well, police. We'll come back to that one.
I'm not trying to open a can with that, but it's just
no. I have a very interesting theory on police and how to fix police. Is what I mean by that. But so what you said reminds me. I get asked a lot from the soccer community, from the rugby community. Track is not as much now, but the question always is like, what if LeBron played rugby? What if JJ Watt played rugby? What if LeBron played soccer? What if so-and-so played, field hockey? And, the thought of, not the argument of these are sports that some people are exposed to, not even that thought process. The fact of the matter is, rugby, soccer, field hockey are all scrumming for relevance as a sport using third and fourth tiered athletes. Right, because the fact of the matter is, you could put the best athlete in field hockey, U.S. field hockey today, on any playing surface, any training surface, with a 10-day contract NBA guy, and that guy would. So the best athletes aren't playing these sports, right? So what I mean by that is the brightest minds aren't in business. I mean, I share myself, like in government. I share myself, like I opted out of government once I realized that it would take me 10 years to make any type of consequential change. I can do that as a private citizen running my own business, to your point, right? So
in like 2 weeks, right? In like 2 weeks.
Right. I don't need to win an election, kiss 3 babies, owe 5 favors to host a turkey drive in the underserved part of my city or my community. I can sell 2 projects and do that in 6 weeks. You know what I mean? And so, I'm saying that to say, like, the best and brightest minds are not in politics. They're no longer in politics because there's no. So you keep the Reed Hastings example. Imagine Reed Hastings' skill set of not his money, skill set, ability, ingenuity, and creativity in an elected position. Like, think about, regardless of what it was, regardless of his ethical values or his political values, whatever it is, he was supercharged.
Game changer.
Whatever position he was in. Yeah. Game changer.
Yeah.
That guy's never considered running for office. Yeah. And I can understand why.
He would win that first quarter of his term for sure. See my tie in there? I like it. Yeah. I'm curious. Dude, I want to, do you mind if we shift just real quick? Because I want to come back to the police thing too, because I want to hear what you have to say about that. It's just interesting to me. I was at the George Floyd Memorial a couple weeks ago, walking through that, and it was crazy to me because it was one of the most peaceful experiences I've ever had in my life. And it's different from there to Portland, and how we were talking about difference, just geographical, psychological differences that exist in certain parts of the country, versus if something like that was in Portland, it would still be pretty violent, I would think, versus I'm walking through this place in Minneapolis, the George Floyd Memorial, and no joke, it was almost like we were back in like Woodstock in 1969, at least how I've read about it, because race didn't matter, color didn't matter. Everyone was just coexisting and just grieving for what happened. And it was just an interesting scenario for me to be a part of. I'll never forget it my entire life. But you're going back to like Reed Hastings, or we're coming back to that. And you think of political terms, even like a presidency is 4 years, and everyone even talks about like their first 100 days when they're in office and they need like a quick win and something like that. You've got a program that's, I'm very interested in this, how to win the first quarter of your day. Right. And I'm interested, how did that even come about? Because I know my morning routine, and even coming in today, because I'm batch recording 5 podcasts in a day, right? Just back to back to back, so some quick lunches. And my assistant, Dan, he's like, make sure you do your routine tomorrow morning. He's like pounding on me. And he knows that if I don't do that, because immediately when I get up, he's like, go to bed at the right time, get your butt up tomorrow morning and do your normal routine, which for me is getting out of bed within 5 minutes. I eat breakfast immediately. I work out right after that. Then I have a protein snack right after that. Then I shower. Then I go into the studio or the office or whatever else. That's my morning, 5-6 days a week. And I know, and he knows that if I don't do that, I'm off. So what is your gig with the first quit? Is that what you're thinking of? Something like that?
Yeah. So the idea. So first off, I'm just guessing. I have no idea. Do you have any athletic background in your athletic experience in your baggroup?
I played baseball for 9 years and soccer for 4. So yes, and it was the baseball was very organized. I could have gone into the semi-pros if I wanted to, but I just ended up going into technology, and I was actually going to be a cop first off too. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
Which still, I was going to join the military. There's another thing. That's the disciplines, right?
So well, not just the discipline. So baseball is the most consistent, scheduled, aligned sport in our culture. I mean, so you think about, regardless of what level you played, if you played anything beyond middle school, your protocols in the daily, right? So you think about, let's just assume you played, small time college ball. Your day to day from 8 o'clock in the morning, let's say on a road game, to noon is the same. Clockwork. And so, when the first quarter came in for me was, I'm a morning person. I'm very honest about my strengths and weaknesses, and I understand that if I can win the off season, going back to athletics, if I can win the off season, that's when champions are built, right? The idea that Pacquiao or Mayweather or Ronaldo or whoever you want to name strolls onto an athletic surface and dominates is a non-athletic farce, right? Those champions are built in the off season. And so, without knowing it, I've created like a pretty awesome, pretty strong, what I call off season or preseason to my day. And the off season for your day is 4 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock. And so I wrote my first book last year, Alpha Redefined, and I did like a 6-city promo tour. And at the end of the book signing, I would get the same question, like without fail, right? So as an entrepreneur, you realize like, wait a minute, this is a pain point potentially, right? Like this is necessarily an opportunity, but there's something here that I should continue to seek. And the question was, how do you do so many things in one day, right? So you're a public speaker, you do work with NFL clubs, you do work with USA Football, you got a sports construction company, you're heavy in the community, you spend time with your family, right? So my answer every time was, Rick, like I win the first quarter of my day. I get up early, I have a routine I keep pretty consistent, and I get back home and, kind of like you said, debriefing with my team. And it's like, well, wait a minute, guys, like have I been sitting on something that could be a resource to our clients and to, our teammates and those who lean on us for this type of support? And so we spent about, I'd say about 6 to 8 weeks rolling this out with our current clients. And just like you talked about, like the response is like, you just get it. And so, so then you find this like the looking up at what you think is the summit or the peak of a mountain. And it's like, okay, well, how do I get this to everybody? Right? Like, and there's only so many clients again, right? I can take on. And,
you find something that you get excited about. This is me, dude. I feel you. You find something you get excited about. It's like, I need to tell everybody right now.
Right. Exactly. And so we took on more clients, and, you do everything as an entrepreneur. Like that doesn't work. The bandwidth isn't there, the quality. And I'm one of those as an ex-athlete, like it's a game or no game, right? We're not rolling out junk. We don't do that. And so, it's like, well, if we can package it, or how do we package it? If we can package it, if we can get this out to the masses, then, I use the word ecosystem a lot, right? But like, if we can get this out to the masses, we can permanently, selfishly impact our ecosystem. Because going back to the construction example, I need whatever guy's working on that freeway on his A game. I don't need you to have a crap day today. You know what I mean? Like, I need you feeling good when you get to your job, to whatever you've got to do. And so, that's kind of how we came up with, and just really how to scale it. Now, one challenge, I will be transparent with you. I was extremely sensitive when it came to pricing, right? I mean, I think that's one of every entrepreneur's biggest challenges is, how do you establish price point? How do you validate? How do you back in the value you provide to establish the price point? Well, we established our price point. But then, going back to that servant's heart, just like a gut shot was like, dude, this is the middle. So I began writing the script in January. We filmed the first day of shooting was March 13th, right? So the beginning of COVID. And so, there was this kind of pause of, do you sit on this for a while? Do you wait for COVID? Do you see how the economy is going to respond? And again, like having a servant's heart, the answer is like, no, you double down. So what you do is you offer tiered pricing, right? So we've got kind of our our top of the line, everything, all the bells, all the whistles. Then we have kind of a medium price, but then we have one course, or what we call win the first quarter of your day essentials, that will always be $97. Like the last thing you want is for there to be a barrier for folks to, when you're trying to help them and try to help them increase their performance.
For sure, man. And you'll get different psychological profiles of every individual too. And this is key for everyone, because when I go back to when I first hired, because you're talking about really like a coaching program. I mean, you're Coach Cam, right? And they're courses, but you become their virtual coach in a way. And I'm sure you have levels too in some of those, so where there's even some more types of direct access like most have. And I know that thinking back to when I was broke, I always wanted to have a mentor that could take me further than where I am right now. And it's like, I think back to those tiers. It's like back in those days, I couldn't go for the diamond or the platinum, the top tier program that anybody offered, just because I didn't have the money. It was rough for me to even sacrifice something in my life to even go for the lowest tier. But that's what I could do at that point in time. And it's the theory of something is better than nothing. You have to start at some point, but then there's also the psychological thing about being all in. I mean, that's what I'm all about, right? Is just going into the deep end and starting right away. But there has to be every single decision that you come up with. I always think of those individuals from my servant's heart too, of saying, what if they feel like they just can only take that one first step? What does it matter, even if they can't, take all 10 and say, I'm in this for the next year to get out of it everything I possibly can, and I'm going to the top tier. But what if there's something that's just pulling them back? Because there could be a spouse they're married to that's mentally abusive, verbally abusive, that's saying, oh, you're never going to amount to anything, right? And they're thinking, well, if only I could just take the first step. And that $97 could be that very first step. And if that didn't exist from someone like you who's awesome and putting out that very first rung while they're trying to climb that ladder to a better life, to the best life they possibly can be, that person still might be stuck where they're at. So, man, I appreciate your perspective on that, because as a coach, you have to almost like meet people where they are. And this is almost coming back to like the Christian in me too, right? Because it didn't matter whether somebody was, Jesus in and of himself almost turned his back a lot on the high and the mighty and the affluent, because he said it's easier for a camel to fit through the eye of the needle than it is for a rich person to enter into heaven, right? But then he would always go to the beggars, always the poor people that were ready to take just that one first step. Into a life that was better for them. And this isn't even like spirituality. It's just conceptual. It's just principles, right? And you're that person that's in their life right now to where you can say, you know what? Just take that one first step. That's what you need to do right now. And you know what? When you take that first step, then the next step is going to become more clear, and it's going to be easier as you keep going to take those steps. The work you have to do is actually going to get harder. That's the secret, right? As you keep pressing through this stuff, a lot harder. But still, it becomes easier to take that step into that next phase.
Yeah, that's so true. You touched on something. The most of the words in our language come from either a Latin origin or a Greek origin, right? Coach, the word coach is one of the few American-based words. And literally, the word coach as we know it came from the word stagecoach. And so everybody knows that lacrosse is like, the first indigenous like American sport, like Native Americans playing lacrosse. And the word coach came from stagecoach drivers who would take athletes, would take people to play from one colony or from one area to the other, and they were scared sometimes to go in the dark. Because again, like country dark, I'm not sure how far you are in the country, but country dark is dark. Right?
You see all the stars though, right?
Well, on a good night, yeah. Yep. Right? And so you think about, the job of a coach. The job of a coach is to get you from one place to the other, even if you don't want to go, even if you're scared to go. Like my job as a coach is to help you get there. And so, no, you're so spot on. And I think that, not only understanding some of the setbacks that we don't consider, we don't realize because we're not in people's day-to-day lives, but just understanding that no matter who or where you are, times are hard now. And not even COVID, not even the economy, right? But it's easier to be overfed, oversexed, overdistracted, over social media, like that distractions piece, that distraction place is more prevalent now than it's ever been. And so, to your point, how do we as servants find ways to make ourselves available to folks without being spammy, without being right? So just as a resource, if you want a resource, I'm here, which is again a big part of why I'm glad to be on this show and some of the other shows I'm doing. Like there are valuable nuggets. So for the person who's saying I'm just not in a position to scrape up $97, then here's a body of work, right? And so again, information at some point should be free and accessible, but you also have to understand that when you piece it together, it's not as easy, right? So you've got to figure out where to find this piece, where to decimate this, how to apply this. But the trade-off is, if you want to get better, there are folks like you and I who are here to help you get better.
That's beautiful. I love that. Here's a question, because there's this realization, right? And we're talking about taking these steps. So you got winning the first quarter of your day. Where's that realization? Because you almost have to, because I've got all in, right? And the A is acceptance. And acceptance is not like accepting where you're at, is saying it's okay. It's accepting the truth and the reality of where you're at. And that has to be saying, I'm looking in the mirror and I'm being honest with myself as far as where I'm at right now and realizing that something needs to change. All right, where is that in winning the first quarter of your day? Where do you realize that saying, you know what? My days start out chaotically. How do you even come to that point to say, I need to make a shift here?
Yeah. So the way, having a bit of an educator's background, the curriculum or the course is written using a pedagogy format, which means, so pedagogy is the art of teaching, right? And so the course contains modules. Within each module are smaller plays. The very first module is called Open Your Eyes. And so as a person who, I'm sure like you, I'm driven, I'm ambitious, I'm all in everything I do, one of the trade-offs for me is I can allow anxiety to sneak up on me. I can let the stress, I put myself under, I'm just a competitive person, right? And so the very first play, the very first module is called Gratitude or Grace. And so when you put your feet on the floor, when you start your day, there's some days, yesterday, like I called for grace. I could feel the anxiety. Anxiety is almost like a little baby mouse, like creeping up on your back, and it gets up to your ears, and before you know it, it's like in your head, right? You can feel it from here, right? So it's like, today, I just need grace, right? I just need the grace to get up, to flip the lights on, to brush my teeth, to get in the truck, to get to the gym. I just need the grace to roll with the windows down because it feels good. I just want to have the grace of like feeling your wind hitting me to start my day. Then there are other days when you're feeling good and you've got that momentum, and then you're calling on gratitude, right? I just have the gratitude and the thankfulness to put my feet on the ground, and the gratitude to have delicious toothpaste that like leaves my breath feeling confident as I go into the gym.
Did you just say delicious toothpaste?
Dude, you remember when toothpaste tastes like punishment?
Yeah. Oh God, yes. Those days when it was I'm sure everybody. Well, maybe not everybody, but just like straight up baking soda or something like that. That's what all.
That's right. That's what it all used to taste like. Rest it taste. Yes. Oh God, yes, right.
Delicious toothpaste. You know what I'm grateful for sometimes, man? 2 and 3 ply toilet paper. Okay,
right. That's right. That's right. No
same thing. Yep.
And so, it's like, so then just even this conversation, it's like, man, we have so much to be thankful for, dude.
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, in our lifetime, and again, I don't, I didn't have the hardest life growing up, but I didn't have everything. Like we had some of those peroxide. So like, wet your toothbrush, dip in the peroxide, dip it in baking soda, brush your teeth.
Yeah.
Right. So to go from like having a morning where the best morning started off with dip in my mouth and like pasty, peroxide and stuff, to even on a bad day, I get to have like a whitening breath. It's just like staying in the moment of being gracious.
Yeah.
Right. And like we talk about like opening your eyes. It's like, one of the things we talk about, and I travel quite a bit, or I did pre-COVID to speak, was, when you are on the speaking circuit, like anything else in life, you love it. You're on the road, you're in hotels, you're racking up miles, you get to see. I mean, I've seen, like, our country is amazing. For those who don't travel, like, we live in the most beautiful country in the world.
It really is, man. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, after the sexiness of travel wears off, you begin to have a little remorse, leaving your family and looking, just leaving your house. And so one of the things that I talk about in Open Your Eyes is, as you're calling for grace or gratitude, even if it's just a regular day and you're going to your home office, it's just putting eyes on the people that you care about. And being thankful for even having them in your life, and for, watching someone sleep. I think, this sounds like a stalker thing, right? So, like, in context, but like watching somebody sleep is beautiful. I mean, so just being able to see the people you provide for sleeping in peace.
Yeah, right on.
And so
man.
for me, like this course is, me being honest enough to say, like, I know my flaws, I know my strengths, but I know, like, really my weaknesses. And here's how I was able to offset some of those. But then the added bonus was, in writing my book last year, I was able to interview, I think I interviewed 12 millionaires, 9 of them self-made. Right. And so, we talk about, like, wealth and health. It's like, yeah, this is what I'm doing on my wealth journey, on my wealth path. But like LeVar Burton used to say on Reading Rainbow, don't just take my word. Like, hear what like this person has what you think you want or what you say you want. Here's what this person says about, morning routines. Here's what this person says about affirmation. This is what this person says about journaling. This is what this person says about goal setting. This is what this person says about, like, how to build wealth. And so, I humbly do take credit for the formatting and the framework, but the best skill set and best practice is, like any coach. There's, nothing is new under the sun. This is just me extracting the best from the brightest and aggregating it in a way that makes sense.
That's awesome. It's so fun too, being in the coaching area, because what you were saying too is, without saying it really, is that this is stuff, these are things that have worked for you. And I love this, because everything that I do is stuff that's worked for me, and it's going to resonate with certain groups of people that are out there. And then it won't resonate with somebody else. Like, whatever programs I have will resonate with an audience that's ready to resonate with me. But for you, whoever you resonate with, they might not want my stuff. And that's okay too, because what you've done will work for them, and what I do will work for a completely different crowd of people. And that's the beauty. I mean, you're talking about, like, the beauty of our nation too, with geographically. But dude, this nation is full of beautiful people too. And such diverse mindsets and needs and wants. And there's different groups that will always resonate with somebody else than another person. And that's also, when it comes to a coach, you always have to be confident in that too, and understand that you're not the end all and be all for most people. Because right off the bat, and I realized this right away, that half the people are not going to like me. And that's okay too, because they're just not going to.
Okay.
Right on. And that's when you get to that point, even as a coach, because especially since COVID, man, this is crazy. We've been doing this for years now, you and I, but COVID comes up, and all of a sudden there's all these new life coaches that exist.
Oh, right. Yeah.
These internet life coaches, right? And it's like, wait, you're forgetting. I still have a real business. Coach Cam still does real things rather than just being a coach.
Right. Yeah, no, so it's so funny. I got in I'm a Texan, right? So, I shoot guns, I drive a truck, right? So it's like, I'm very much a Texan. And part of that is calling things how you see it. And so I ended up getting in a unintentional, heated debate with the guys on this podcast last week. And we're talking about the term coaching. And I was like, look, like, respectfully, as a person who has spent a large time of his life as an athlete and a coach, I kind of have, like, a chip on my shoulder about all of these upsprout internet coaches, right? And so we go into it, and I let him, he goes on his soapbox and whatever. And so, number one, aside from coaching, what do you do? Right? If the only thing you do is coaching all day, then you're well, get out of here, right? But then number two, and I think you can appreciate this as an ex-athlete, have you ever lined up regardless of the skill level, not the pros, college, it doesn't matter. Have you ever lined up and absolutely had to tell someone the right thing to do at the right time, and or executed the right thing at the right time? Like, do you know the pressure of 3rd and 1?
Yeah. Yep.
And he was like, what's 3rd and 1? 31? 3rd and 1. Right? So we have to get a stop. We cannot give you 36 inches. Right? We have 36 inches to make a stand to get you off the field, or I need 37 inches to continue this drive because we have to score.
Yep.
And so that's where the upsprout, like, internet, like, coach this, hey, I'm coach 1, 2, 3, and it's like, yeah, dude, like, yes, you may.
Dude, I'm stealing that, by the way, coach 1, 2, 3. That's a thing.
Yes, you've purchased this how to coach people packet on the internet, which may have value in it. Right.
Yeah.
But a part of coaching, the point I'm trying to make is what you said earlier. Part of being a coach is saying, you know what? I don't have the answer. Like, I don't know. And I think that's where these like pseudo psycho new coaches who know everything. And it's like, well, dude, if you know everything, then what are you doing? Right. So be a real value to somebody. And I think that, the last thing I'll say is, and my mentor coach told me this, be afraid of the person who has every answer. Like, all the answers to everything, that's a red flag.
For sure. I've seen a lot of, over the past pandemic months, I've seen a lot of, 18-year-old life coaches pop up too. And dude, it's I love teens. I mean, that's actually like that in college age is really where my heart always goes to, because it's always, it's like overnight. You graduate from high school, you no longer have any curfew, or you're legally an adult. You don't have the restrictions that you used to have. And now all of a sudden you're supposed to have the answers to what you're going to do for the rest of your life, just like overnight, literally. And that's why, especially the 18-year-old group, like 18 to 25, is why my heart really goes out to them. But I see the 18-year-old coaches, and I feel two things when I see this. It's like, for starters, I think back to where I was when I was 18, with my dad just dying 2 years earlier, raising my brother and sister. And it's like, there are some life experiences that I've had that I could speak into somebody else's life right now. But there's no way that I could talk to somebody who's 40, 50, 60 years old about running a business, because I've never done it. And an important part that I learned about being a coach early on is I can never take somebody to where I haven't been myself. I can give them opinions, but I cannot lead them. If they want to use me as a sounding board, cool, but I cannot lead them into an area of life that I've never been in myself. And that's important, I feel, for a lot of coaches starting out too. Because even though you're going to be a coach, and let's say there was a gentleman who I was talking to, he's a friend of mine, he has a cybersecurity business just like me. He's like, you know what, I'm going to be a life coach now. I'm like, sweet. You want, really, what I hear you saying in that is that you want to positively impact other people's journeys through life. Maybe a coach is not the way to do that, because let's look at your experiences in life, because you can only bring somebody as far as you've gone right now. So what are you going to do? And this is important when you find a coach too, that I've seen. You need to find a coach that continues to evolve and learn themselves. And who is the coach's coach? Right? Because even as a coach right now too, dude, I bet you lean on people right now. You still have mentors and coaches, right?
Heavily. I mean, yes, very much so. You have to evolve, you have to develop. And I think that, even to tie the politics thing back into it, there are some things, some frameworks, some value systems that I had 5, 6, 7 years ago that, to your point, as you rise in stature, as you rise in success, you know what? Like, I'm not sure if this person's even still in business. Let me just drop an email and say, hey, I advised you of this, or this was my framework of my best practice 6 or 7 years ago. Let's jump on a quick Zoom and let me tell you why I think I may have been wrong, or the way I see things now is different. And I think that, the moment that you become stagnant and static is, the moment that you're no longer a contributor to your ecosystem. And I think that I was not only, am I hard pressed to see life from that perspective? As an athletic coach, I was faced with, that was the only way for me to find success. So I got my first head coaching job at 30 years old. I was an athletic director. I was the youngest AD in the city of Houston, about 15 years, 20. And so I would be coaching against guys who had been coaching longer than I've been alive. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I'm not gonna I reach down in my bag of experience and it's only this deep. so I've got to continue to learn. I've got to get better. I've got to stress test. I've got to ask a lot of questions. Even if those questions sound dumb, I've got to go back and look at old film, old footage. I've got to look at why this guy's winning, why this guy isn't. Right. So you have to remain curious. You have to remain deeply curious, but then, next to curious, you have to remain humble. And the moment you think you've got this thing figured out is the moment that some spry 30-year-old is going to come and whoop your tail on a Friday night.
Right on, man. That's great. There's one thing we need to come back to before we hop off the show today, and that's our police. I said we were going to come back to it. I got my note here.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear your take on this, man, because we started out with politics and then we went into just life and amazingness, really. So it's interesting to me because you are from a Republican state. You're from a red state. You're an African American. You're a social capitalist. So you've got like a blend of ideals that exist there. Where do police fall into this? Because there's these cries of defunding and everything, but we both recognize that there's reform, and this is back to that 80% of America, right? That needs that understands they're in the same boat, that there has to be reform about a bunch of topics, but police force is one of them too. So where are you? What's your idea, man? Because I'm curious. Because I genuinely ask these questions because I'm sincere and I like helping people. And I was going to be a law enforcement officer, So and I'm glad at this point that I didn't do that. I still had a private security agency, but I'm glad I didn't go into that because I feel like I have more impact. And it was a different realm for me. So what are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah. So a point of context for me. My first the first time I had a gun put on me by the police, I was 9 years old.
Wow.
The last time I had a gun put on me, I was in Cleveland in 2016. I'm trying to think how old I was. I guess 34. In 2016. So 9 years old. I'm just trying to give some context too, like why I see the police the way I do.
Yeah.
So 9 years old, I'm on the Greyhound bus. My parents are sending me to Louisiana to see my grandparents. This is again like back in the early 90s where you can stick a kid on the bus and they have somebody pick them up, right? So we're in the middle of East Texas, like dead nowhere. And the bus gets pulled over by a convoy of police officers. And looking at it now, it was just a bunch of old, like, casino women on the bus. I was like the youngest kid. Like, just a bunch of old people, right? Like, minding their business. I'm literally reading a spot. My parents packed me a paper sack of fried chicken, 2 strawberry sodas, and like a stack of I'm literally reading Superman comics books. I'm a kid, right? On this bus. They pull me off the bus. They tell me that they have reason to believe that drugs are being brought across the state line from Texas to Louisiana. And they had a tip that it was me. I'm 9 years old, dude. What? So I'm a big kid now. I'm sure I look like maybe like a preteen or I'm a big kid, but I'm 9. Right. So I call my parents, collect from the payphone at this, corner store. I can't tell you the city that we got put over in. I'm crying. I'm scared. I don't want to go to jail. I'm 9, so I don't have ID. Right. And so, that experience could have gone so bad. And when I say I'm so thankful, like that could have been really bad. Right. So that was the first time I had a gun put on me by the police. The last time I had a gun put on me by the police was Cleveland 2016. I'm out there doing a speaking gig and they've got me in this like what they call it, like a Nissan Sentra. It's like the size of like a tuna can, right? So I'm like taking up the whole thing, and I get put over for speeding. And I was a small little town outside of Cleveland. I didn't know speed limit. I take responsibility for that. So this short little petite white lady comes out. She's a police officer, and I've got my insurance on the dashboard on my iPhone. I've got my license on the dashboard, and I've got my hands on the ceiling, which is about here. Like my head was like touches like this itty bitty little car. Which again, in hindsight, I'm sure the optics. I'm sure I was like a gorilla driving like this clown car, right? So I get. She pulls over, and I can see her like draw down on me. And out of the mirror, and Rick, so I dropped the window down 10-20%. And when I tell you, dude, as eloquent as I can speak, as even keeled as I can be, as like whatever you want to call it. I was fighting tears. I was fighting anger. I was fighting want to punch her in her face. I was fighting like whether to like wrestle it. I mean, I like that's not how you want to die. And this is in the middle of what's been a 10-year killing spree of Black men on the side of the streets. And so, for the folks watching and listening who think like that person should have done this, George Floyd should have done that. George Floyd is from Houston. Like, I know 2 of his classmates personally that went to Yates High School with him. Like, I'm not saying the guy was a saint, but he was a warm-spirited, good person, right? And so, I'm saying all this to say, like, it is my theory on how to fix police comes from those experiences. I don't think that there should be career police officers. Kind of what we talked about with politicians. So my neighbor in front of me is a cop. My best friend is a cop. And, both of them, just Sunday, he was washing his truck and he was talking about like, I struggle with not even reading people's license plate when he's in line at Chick-fil-A in his personal vehicle, just looking up in the rearview mirror and reading the plates. I mean, he doesn't even have a computer to scan license. He's like, you're so on edge all day. In addition to that, half of them smoke cigarettes, dip, or taking Red Bull, taking Monster drinks to make it through their day. It's, I say this sympathetically, that is a very hard job. Like that's a hard job to have. Not just for you to make it home to your family every day, but you can be a bad dentist and maybe drill a wrong tooth in somebody and now their tooth hurts for a day. You can be a bad baker and like burn a loaf of bread. But if you're a bad cop, somebody may die.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea, you don't get days off. And I say that like compassionately. I don't know that the idea of a cop working the beat, I don't know what the answer is. I don't have the stats to prove it or to establish like what the threshold should be. But the idea of being deeply, deeply suspicious of everyone that you interact with for 8 to 12-hour shifts is not sustainable.
Oh, sure. It's the neurological patterns, and they get stronger and stronger the longer you go through. That's an interesting perspective, man. It's I think back to even like the Secret Service, and different federal law enforcement agencies. I know specifically the Secret Service, they don't allow them to serve in the field, like on protective details forever. Rotate. Exactly.
Right.
And they stick them at a desk too. That way they can sort of break those mindsets of like something bad is going to happen every single day of my life. It's along the same concept. That's something you got there, man. I think, it's interesting. I have no idea how to implement that successfully, but if the Secret Service did it, maybe that's something that we can maybe use as a model across the board. That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I think, how you begin to implement it, I don't have the short-term answer, but to your point, the Secret Service provides for a great muse. And I think, again, like entrepreneurs, you may be able to take from it and innovate and make it even better. I don't know. But it just goes back to why you and I like the color purple so much, right? I mean, we all, you want to make it home to your family. So do I. You want cops to catch bad guys. So do I. Right. And so like we have so much more in common than we do, the things that we see different. And it's just, having these disarming conversations like this is how we build the best version of our country.
I love it, my man. That's awesome. And where can everybody find you and follow you? Social media, where can they connect with you?
So social media, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Coach Cam Cares on those social media platforms. And then the course, the book Alpha Redefined. I just created a digital magazine, complimentary. It's free. Just grab it there. It's kind of just a creative piece that I made. Those can be found on CoachCamCourses.com.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Coach, I really appreciate you being on, man. And I think the disarming conversations is my favorite part of today. It's what I live for, brother. It is. Keep growing your beard too, man, because that thing is sick. I love it. Yeah.
No doubt, baby.
You can start to get creative with it at this point, I think, and shape it up a little bit, or are you just going to keep going? What you thinking?
Well, so here's a funny thing. So I braid it at night sometimes. You can kind of shape it, contour it.
Yeah.
It's getting woolly. It's getting woolly here. So I may trim it and play with it a little bit. I've got I've got COVID trust issues, man. So it'll be a while till I'm back in the barbershop. So I'll be in the mirror kind of butching at it myself.
For sure. That's awesome, brother. Thanks again, my man. I appreciate you being on.
No, thanks for the opportunity.